Good evening, everybody. I welcome you all for this meeting on Gangaikonda Cholapuram, the city, the builder, and the temple. Some of you muted your mics. Kindly mute your mics. Today we are going to see about Gangaikonda Cholapuram, the city, the builder of this great city and the temple of Gangaikonda Cholapuram in detail in the two-part lecture that's going to be presented. And with this note, I'm welcoming you all for this meeting on Gangaikonda Cholapuram. Gangaikonda Cholapuram city was built as a great metropolis in the South India in 11th century. Gangaikonda Cholapuram is now located in Ariyalur district of Tamil Nadu, created as the capital of Cholas by Rajendra Chola, son and the successor of the great Rajaraja Chola I. Rajendra Chola, who conquered a large area of South India in the beginning of 11th century, created this beautiful capital city of Cholas from somewhere about 1025 CE. That's almost about 990 years back. The next 250 years, the city controlled the entire Fedra in the north and to Sri Lanka in south. Such vast area of this subcontinent was under the control of the capital city of Gangaikonda Cholapuram for almost 250 years during the time of the great Cholas. Now the question comes to everybody's mind as to why did Rajendra build a new capital city and a magnificent temple in this capital city, which is totally away from Tanjavur, and Tanjavur has existed as the capital city of the Cholas, and it was a very prominent, bustling city, and that ruled the entire South India for almost 150 years. There has been some reasons for him to create a new capital city and come out of Tanjavur. Let's explore that. Rajendra was a great Rajaraja. All the success of the war during the time of Rajaraja was because of Rajendra. Rajendra Chola was chosen to be the co-regent and the successor of Rajaraja only in 1012 CE. He became the king of the great Chola Empire in 1014, almost at the age of 40. Rajendra Chola, when he became the king of Chola, he was 40 years old. Rajendra was a very, very ambitious person and wanted to conquer many countries and expand his empire far and beyond. On becoming the king, the moment he became the king, he co-opted his first son, eldest son, Rajati Raja, as his co-regent, and he started concentrating on his conquest of all over the parts of India and Southeast Asia. To carry out his military expeditions, he needed a vast stretch of barren land that was flat to house all the soldiers, train them in the army warfare, and he had to keep battalions and battalions of horses and elephants also for all these expeditions. So he wanted a flat, barren land for all this training and everything had to take place. And that's why he chose this particular place in Aryallur district for his new capital city. Tanjavur was not suited for this as a capital city. It needed close proximity to the seaports and also the movement of troops without any hindrance for any attacks that they are going to take in the northern part of India. See, Tanjavur is a place where so many rivers are flowing. In those days, not much of dams. I mean, the bridges were there as what we see today. So the movement of troops from Tanjavur was always difficult during the monsoon seasons and other seasons also. So it took a lot of time for them to plan well ahead and come. Certain things were not been in a position to do. So he wanted to move his troops very quick and very fast. So that's why he came out of Tanjavur, and so that he could move up north without any hindrance. And these were the major reasons for him to select this barren stretch of land that was totally dry and which had the proximity to the Nagapattinam port of the Cholas, and also very easy accessible to the second capital of the Cholas, which was located in Kanchi. Kanchi was always considered as the second capital of the Cholas, where they had stationed huge cantonment there. And that was a very important strategic place from where they took off all their expeditions to the north and other places. So that approach to Kanchi and to the seaport of Nagapattinam was very easy from this location of Gangaikonda Cholapuram. And that was one of the greatest reasons for him to select Gangaikonda Cholapuram, background for which he created. But when he created a great city, a big city, a metropolis in a barren land, what do we do for the water? Water was a very, very scarce commodity there, and this was a dry, barren land. Water was not available. So Rajendra created a big lake at the outskirts of this great city. This Aryallur district and this place where this Gangaikonda Cholapuram is located, geographically, it is an area which is full of mines. You have the gypsum, the limestone mines, the lignite mines, everything is located around this area. So the water, the rainfall that happens during the month of September, October, gets drained and goes on and joins the Bay of Bengal without any use to for agriculture or any other purpose. So to harvest the entire rainwater of this region, he created a huge lake called the Cholagangam Lake at the outskirts of the city to take care of the needs of the city and others also. His desire was to surpass his father in all aspects and stand out himself as a great king. That's one of the reasons he built this magnificent temple for Shiva at Gangaikonda Cholapuram. He had a dream that this temple that he builds must be sanctified and revered like Padal Petrasthalams. When you see Tanjavur temple built by Rajaraja, it was built in the capital city as a great, what do you call it, a monument or something that boasts about the great king Rajaraja. When Rajendra decided to make this particular temple here in Gangaikonda Cholapuram, almost all the landmarks are out of the picture. They're spread.
Guru?
Chola
Guru, can you hear us?
They're bustling with bhakti movement. So there you.
Yeah, Guru, your voice unfortunately is still breaking badly. We're hardly able to, I mean, the sentences just go off. We've all turned up our videos, but we're still unable to. Do you want to take
No,
5 minutes or just
Prashant,
see? Yes.
Prashant, let me move out to some other place and just give this. Huh? Just give me
Okay,
2 minutes. Huh?
No problem. No
I'll
problem.
just move out this.
Sure. No problem. Take your time. We'll wait for it. Yeah.
Connection.
हॉटस्पॉट कनेक्ट करने जा
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Guru, we can hear you. It seems to be better.
Is it okay?
Yeah, seems
okay,
much
okay.
better. Seems much better.
Is that okay? Can I go ahead?
Yes, Guru, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption. So his desire was to surpass his father in all aspects and stand out himself as a great king. So he built this magnificent temple for Shiva. He had a dream that the temple he builds should be sanctified and revered as the Padalpetra Stalams, and just not speak about the greatness of the temple alone. The Rajarajan's temple at Tanjavur was a great, magnificent monument, like, and there was no sanctity added to this because it was a temple built as Rajarajeshwaram in the name of the king. So it was boasting the image of the king. So he did not want this to be like that. So that's why he created this Gangaikonda Cholapuram as a temple that speaks about the greatness of Shiva. He made, then even he brought the Ganga waters after defeating the Pala kings in Bengal. And with that holy water, he sanctified the temple as well as the Cholagangam lake, which he built it. As a capital of city of Cholas, this city was filled with temples, palaces, bazaars, wide roads and colonies for soldiers, palatial houses for the nobles and others. It was a bustling city with a lot of activity. The great temple of Shiva, built by Rajendra in the name of Gangaikonda Cholishwarar, and today it is known as Bragadishwara also. At this place is next only to the great temple of Tanjavur in its monumental nature, but this particular temple of Gangaikonda Cholapuram surpasses the temple of Rajaraja, which was built in Tanjavur, in its cultural beauty and quality. Now, what you see here in this picture is the beautiful Cholagangam lake, the lake that was created by Rajendra before starting his capital. This is a wonderful lake that harvests the entire rainwater that comes into the Zariyalur district, and he's channelized all the rainwater from all over the place to come and flow into this wonderful lake. This lake is almost 6 miles in length and almost a mile wide. Such a huge lake he made it to just to meet the needs of the great capital city that he had built. Rajendra, well before starting the construction of this great city, he built this beautiful lake, which is just even today you can see this lake, which is about 2 kilometers away from this Gangaikonda Cholapuram temple. This is one of the biggest man-made lakes in South India. The Cholas are known for making such man-made lakes. Aditya Chola created the big Veeranam lake, which is known as Veeranarayana Eri. Veeranarayana is one of the name of Aditya Chola, and he created this beautiful Veeranarayana lake. Similarly, Rajendra Chola created this Chola Gangam. The celebrated Gangaikondan, or Chola Gangam as you call it, lake, which was man-made by harvesting the rainwater from all the regions to meet the water needs of the capital city. He called this lake as Jalastambam, the victory pillar of his successful Gangetic expeditions. Normally, when the kings go on a war and defeat the other enemy country, they create a Vijayastambam, a pillar of victory, which is a stone pillar on which they inscribe their name and say so-and-so had won over that region and his victory is seen here in this pillar. But here, as far as this lake was concerned, he called this lake as his Jalastambam. Instead of the victory stone pillar, he created this lake as Jalastambam for his successful Gangetic expedition. The royal palace of the Cholas that once existed is no more there. The excavations around this Gangaikonda Cholapuram area was started in 1980 when Dr. Nagaswamy was the director of archaeological survey, archaeologists, and they conducted a lot of excavations around this, and they came across base foundation, a brick structure of the palace and other buildings around that area in a place called Malige Mede, which is about 2 kilometers south of the temple. Now, what you see here in this picture are all the parts of the excavations that were made during 1980. Unfortunately, the excavations were stopped and they were not carried out, and the parts that they were excavated also was not preserved. Hence, all the mud, the rainwater, everything has entered and the whole place is again closed, almost closed now. And this, they say it is lack of funds, and some say it is political reasons that are attributed to it. But somehow, our government should take care to bring out this great city that once existed back to a big monument, back as a big monument. We should know about the greatness of the great city that once existed there. It's my wish. Besides the great temple, there are ancient relics, inscriptions on the temple walls, and these are all the primary source of information that we get to reconstruct the history of this lost city. Copperplate charters issued by Rajendra and his successors also give very valuable information about this great city. Besides the few Tamil literary works like that of the Thiruvisaipa of Karuvur Tevar, the Kalingathu Parani of Jayamkondar, and the Moovar Ula of Ottakuthar furnish great details about this great city of Gangaikonda Cholapuram and its bustling activities. Though the Cholas were defeated by the Pandyas in the beginning of 1300s, the city of Vorayur and Tanjavur were devastated by the Pandyas, who were their arch enemies for the Cholas. Cost almost about 300 or 400 and odd years, the Pandyas could never surface and become the kings of that region. They were suppressed by the Cholas. That enmity, they showed it in Tanjavur and Orayur. But unfortunately, they did not do anything to this great city of Gangaikonda Cholam. They never destroyed the city or the temple there. In fact, they have endowed the temple with grants to conduct the regular pujas and so on. The drawback or the devastation to the city came through the Muslim invasion of Malik Kafur in 1310 and 11 CE. The city, the temple, everything was plundered. All the wealth were looted. All the high-rise buildings and palaces were burnt, totally burnt, and nothing was remaining there. The entire city became like a ghost city. And that was the end of the great city, which fell into ruins. And the major portion of the front portion of the temple was also pulled down, and the Gopura, the entrance Gopura and the front portion of the temple was also pulled down by the Muslim invasion in 1310 and 11 under Malik Kafur. Further damages were attributed to this temple when this temple was under the occupation of the French, who had used this temple as their fortress. Later, the British took over the control of this temple and used this temple premises for their army against the fight with the French. The greatest damage to this temple was done in 1836 when the British constructed a dam across the river Kollidam. That dam, the Kollidam waters, which is known as Vadakaveri, was in floods, and all the waters from the river of Kollidam used to go to Bay of Bengal, which was a waste. So they wanted to divert this water for some agriculture purposes, and they built a check dam there. To build a dam across Kollidam, they needed a strong foundation to be made with granite stones. Some vandal members of the Public Work Department of the British rule pulled down the entire enclosure of walls of the Prakara of this great temple of Gangaikonda Cholapuram, and also the dilapidated Gopuram that was there, which was destroyed by Malik Kafur. 2 or 3 floors were remaining there. All that Gopuram, everything was totally destroyed, and all the stones which were there were carried, and all these stones that they carried had so much of inscriptions, which is a big value of history. Unfortunately, all these things were carried and dumped into that river as the foundation for construction of the dam. So we have lost a great part of the history of the Cholas because of this particular construction that happened in 1836. The city that was founded by Rajendra to commemorate his victorious march to Ganges reflects his personality throughout the days of its eminence and still continues to be so. The great temple, the beautiful city, through its role as the capital of the South India, has totally been forgotten by inhabitants. And now today, it's a very, very small, tiny, dusty village. There's hardly about 10 shops, tea shops, and few shops there. Hardly people live there. It's not a populated village also, a very thinly populated, dry area. And today, it is a forgotten city, which was once a bustling capital of the great Cholas. Now we come to the builder of the great city and the temple, Rajendra Chola. This is the image of Rajendra Chola. that we can see it in the temple of Gangaikonda Cholapuram. The great king like Rajendra is seated in front of the great Shiva there with folded arms and kneeling in front of Shiva. Rajendra I was the son of Rajaraja through his queen Vanavan Madevi. The earlier name that was given to Rajendra was Madurantakan. He was born in the Tamil month of Adi, and his star was Ardra. Rajendra was young boy when Rajaraja ascended the throne in 985. Under the care and guidance of his father, he grew up as the most powerful general of this Tamil country, which has ever seen. When he was 20 years old, he led the Chola army into the heart of the Western Chalukya kingdom. In his campaign, Rajendra is said to have advanced as far as the Bijapur district with an army of 9 lakh soldiers. Apart from that, he served as the Martanda Nayaka, or the commander-in-chief of the wars that the Cholas took against the Vengi country and the Ganga countries during the time of Rajaraja. It was somewhere between 27th of March and 7th of July in the 1012 CE. Rajendra was chosen as the heir apparent by Rajaraja, and Rajendra jointly ruled along with his father as a co-regent for nearly 4 years till 1016 when Rajaraja passed away. Till 1016, for 4 years, Rajendra and Rajaraja were the rulers of this great Chola kingdom. Professor K. Nilakanta Sastry, the greatest authority on Chola history, writes, Rajendra inherited from his father an extensive empire comprising the whole of Tamil Nadu, Andhra, and parts of Karnataka and the island of Sri Lanka. The administration was carefully organized and powerful bureaucracy was brought in during the 33 years of his rule. Rajendra turned all these initial advantages to the best possible use and succeeded in raising the Chola Empire to the position of the most extensive and the most respected Hindu state of his time. Rajendra was a great warrior. He started to participate in major wars from the time of his father. Rajaraja had headed the army, and Rajendra had headed his army as the commander-in-chief even during the time of Rajaraja. Rajendra was the great king of this country who ruled not only the major parts of India, but also the present-day Malaysia, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Cambodia for almost 30-odd years. It's very unfortunate that our textbooks do not talk about this great king. We have been taught about the Mughals and other foreign invaders as great kings. It's very sad that we have forgotten a great king, and hardly there is any mention about this great king Rajendra in our textbooks. Rajendra was one great Hindu king who at his prime time ruled the entire South India and many parts of Southeast Asia and established trade links with many countries like China and all. So he was such a great king. He is truly a great king, and he deserves to be recognized as the great or the greatest. Now look at the map. All the blue colors that you see was directly under the control of the Cholas. And all the pink color markings that you see here are the places that was conquered by Rajendra. All these areas, such a huge, vast, extensive area. He had conquered the whole of Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam, and all the other places. And that was the greatness of Rajendra. He had such a big naval fleet with which he could do all these expeditions. Now you see here in this picture, the route that which Rajendra had taken, the naval route, and how he had conquered all these places, and he established the trade link with China. He came to China like this, conquering all these places. And the trade flourished between the Chola country and China in those days to a great extent. In 1015, Jayashimha was installed as the king of the Western Chalukyas by Rajaraja as a tribute-paying king. Rajaraja conquered the Western Chalukyas, and then he made him Jayashimha as the king who was paying his tributes, and he was considered as a subordinate. When Rajendra was busy in his war campaigns in Sri Lanka, Rajendra took a big war campaign in Sri Lanka to bring back the crown and the Indra Haram of the Pandyas back to the Cholas. The Pandyas were gifted with a great Indra Haram and a crown, a very beautiful crown, which was given by Indra. And that was the crown used by the Pandyas, and the Indra Haram they wore and sat on the throne. Anybody who doesn't wear that precious jewel were not recognized as the king by the Pandyan country people. So this was when the Cholas defeated the Pandyas. These Pandyas had taken it and left it somewhere in Sri Lanka with the Buddhist monks to keep it in safe custody. And from the time of Aditya Chola, they were trying to get this back. Unfortunately, they could not succeed. Rajendra was the one person who succeeded in bringing back that, and he crowned himself with this jewel of the Pandyas and the crown of the Pandyas. So when he was busy in that expedition at Ceylon, Sri Lanka, this Chalukyan king, Vimaladitya, who was the brother-in-law of Rajendra, died. And when he died, his son Rajanarendra should have come to the throne. Unfortunately, there was a conspiracy, and Vijayaditya was promoted for this to claim the throne of the Eastern Chalukyan kings. Rajanarendra was the son of Vimaladitya and Chola princess Kundavai. Rajendra helped his nephew Rajanarendra to defeat Vijayaditya in the Battle of Maski and installed Rajanarendra as the king of the Eastern Chalukya, and that place where he installed became a great city, and today that city, which was founded by Rajanarendra, is known as Rajamandri. Rajendra's next expedition was to the Gangetic Plains through Kalinga. He defeated and killed the Somavamsi king Indraratha. Then he marched into the Pala kingdom, defeated the Mahipala and the Kambojapala Dharmapala. Then he entered the West Bengal, defeated the Govinda Chandra of the Chandra dynasty. Then he brought the holy waters from Ganga to purify his own land after inflicting crushing defeats on the enemy forces up to Bengal. Rajendra led this army from Gangaikonda Cholapuram. A huge battalion went there. Rajendra stood back after defeating the Kalingas. He stood back at the Vengi place somewhere in the coast of, on the banks of Godavari. His commander-in-chief went all the way up to the Gangetic Plains, defeated all the Pala kings and brought back the Ganges water from there. And Rajendra, along with the Ganga water, came back to his holy city and did the inauguration of his great city of Gangaikonda Cholapuram. The Tiruvalangadu copper plate states that the light of solar rays, that is Rajendra, mocks Bhagiratha, who by the force of his austerities caused the descent of Ganga. And that Ganga was brought to sanctify his own land with the waters of the great purified waters of Ganga. Rajendra brings the Ganga water to his city by the mere strength of his hand. So that was the power of Rajendra, who could succeed and defeat all the kings to bring the holy water of Ganga to his capital city of Gangaikonda Cholapuram. The Srivijaya king, centered in Sumatra, was ruled by the Shailendra dynasty during the region of Maravarma Vijayatunga. And Srivijaya had a cordial relationship with the Chola Empire during the time of Rajaraja Chola. The Srivijaya king, Mara Vijayatunga Varman, built a beautiful Buddhist vihara known as Chudamani Vihara in Nagapattinam. And that vihara was flourishing there in the sports city of Nagapattinam during the time of Rajaraja. Sangarama Vijayatunga Varman succeeded Maratunga Vijayavarman after his death. And the relationship between the Cholas and the Srivijaya slowly started to develop cracks as the monks of this vihara started to meddle with the political affairs of the Chola. Even there is a story that goes that Rajaraja's death was also attributed to this vihara. A monk who was brought in from Sri Lanka was the person who pushed down Rajaraja from his temple and all that. There's no authentic information about that. And this is a story that is going on. But there was a major part of political issues that was connected with this vihara and the Chola kingdom. That was a big thing that was turned against the Srivijaya. The Khmer king Suryavarman waged a war against the kingdom of Tambralinga, which is present-day Malaysia. Suryavarman requested an aid from Rajendra to win Tambralinga, and Tambralinga, in other way, asked the request from Srivijaya king Sangarama Vijayatunga Varman. Eventually, this led to a great Chola expedition against Srivijaya Empire. This alliance somewhat also had a political nuance, since both the Chola Empire and the Khmer Empire were Hindus, and the Tambralinga and Srivijaya followed the Mahayana Buddhism. In 1025, Rajendra Chola forces crossed the Indian Ocean, invaded Srivijaya, attacking several places in Malaysia and Indonesia. Cholas ransacked the Gadaram, the Pannai, Sumatra. Rajendra also invaded Tambralinga and Lankushak kingdom, which is the modern day Malaysia, and that's of south of and some parts of South Thailand. This Lankusha is the Langkawi Islands, as we call today. And all these areas were defeated by Rajendra Chola and was brought under his control. The Chola invasion was the end of the great empire of Srivijaya, and the Chola invasion furthered the expansion of Tamil merchant societies and associations such as Manigramam, Ayyavol, and Ainutravar, and so many other people to start the trade with the Southeast Asian country. And that's why you have the Tamil influence totally set up in the Southeast Asian countries even today. The conquest of overseas Sumatra, Malay Peninsula forms a most important event in the life of Rajendra and perhaps the annals of South Indian history. The triumph of the naval expedition was directed against Srivijaya. He also swayed away Gadaram, that is Indonesia. The extent of the empire was the widest in the history of India, and his military and naval prestige of this Cholas were at its highest level. Rajendra Chola had many wives, including Vanavan Mahavadeviyar, Mukkokilan, Arindavan Mahadevi, Veeramadevi, etc. Last, Veeravan Mahadevi is the one who committed sati upon Rajendra Chola's death. Rajendra's inscription claimed Rajendra as a Vedic scholar who was trained in all the Vedas and Shastras. He established a Vedic college in Nennayiram and Tirubhuvanai. The Siddhanta Saravali of Trilochana Sivacharya states that Rajendra was a poet and he composed many hymns in praise of Shiva. Rajendra was a great Shiva Bhakta. He renovated many of the temples. He built a new temple for Vidangar in Tiruvarur, Tiruvattuyur, Manapadi, and so many other places. Rajendra Chola brought a number of Saivates from the banks of Ganga and settled them in Kanchi and many other Chola, all over the Chola country. His guru, the Raja Guru of the Cholas, was Ishana Shiva Pandita, who was from the Gauda Desha. The Gauda Desha is the present-day Bengal and the Pala region. So the Raja Guru of Rajendra was from Gauda Desha. He brought with him some of the most exquisite idols as war booties, and he installed them in different places in the Chola kingdom. Amazing, beautiful war trophies he had brought along with him. What you see here is a beautiful bronze image of the dancing Nataraja in the Chaturathandavam, which he installed it in the Melakadambur temple. Now it is in the Melakadambur temple. Shiva is seen dancing on top of the bull with 10 arms. Such a beautiful dancing pose of Shiva. All round Shiva, you find down below all the Ashtabhairavas dancing. And the Nandi, everything is seen here. It's such a beautiful Pala image, a bronze image which is about 18 inches. This is the war trophy. He had an eye for beautiful things and exquisite things. He brought all these things from there and installed it in the temples here. Not only this, he also brought a beautiful Ganesha from the Pala region. This is a beautiful Ganesha, which is very unusual to see such a Ganesha in South Indian temples. This Ganesha is from the Pala region, which he brought us as a war trophy, and he installed it in the temple of Kumbakonam, Nageswara Swami. And this Ganesha is called as Gangaikonda Ganesha. Rajendra was influenced by two great women in his life. One was his stepmother, the queen of Rajaraja called Panchavan Mahadevi, who brought a change in the lifestyle of Rajendra and introduced him to the nuances of life. The second lady who was having a great influence in Rajendra was this Panchavan Mahadevi is the one who committed sati on the death of Rajaraja. And Rajendra built a temple, a Pallipadai temple in her memory. And today also this temple is existing, which is known as Panchavan Mahadevishwaram. We do not have a Pallipadai temple built for Rajaraja. The mortal remains of Rajaraja after his cremation must have been secured in some place and they should have built a temple. But unfortunately, till today, there is no temple for the Rajaraja's thing here. But a beautiful temple was created as Pallipadai for his stepmother, Panchavan Mahadevi, by Rajendra. That was the great influence that she had on him. Rajendra was very violent and tyrant. She made him a good person, a lover of art, and she introduced a lot of nuances in life to him. So that regard made him to build this beautiful temple for Panchavan Mahadevishwaram, for Panchavan, in remembrance of Panchavan Mahadevi, very close to the Kumbakonam city, about Padayarai, very close to Padayarai. It's a very beautiful small temple, which is known as Pallipadai. This is not a temple, it's known as a Pallipadai in Tamil, where the mortal remains are kept there, buried under the Shivalinga. This is the entrance of this beautiful Pallipadai temple that he built for Panchavan Mahadevi. The next lady who influenced Rajendra was Nangai Paravai, who was also his beloved. She was a dancer from the temple of Tiruvarur, was given the status to be his queen, as a queen. Rajendra used to sit along with her in the chariot and go through the streets of Tiruvarur. Under her influence, he built a beautiful temple for Vidangar. A new temple, the brick structure of the Vidangar temple was constructed as a stone structure, and he built that beautiful structure and covered it entirely with the gold, only under the instruction or the influence of his beloved Paravai Nachiyar, Nangai Paravai. This is the image of Rajendra and his beloved Nangai Paravai, seen in the Tiruvarur temple. Rajendra I died in the village of Brahmadesam, present day, which is located in Tiruvannamalai district. This information of Rajendra's death is recorded in an inscription which was created by his son Rajati Raja. It states that Rajendra's queen Veerama Devi also committed suicide upon her husband's death, and her remains were also interred into the same tomb at this Brahmadesam. This is the temple or the Pallipade of Rajendra at Brahmadesam. A great king who ruled such a vast area. He's here. The mortal remains of him is buried here in this temple. Today, this is a dilapidated temple. Neither the Archaeological Survey of India nor the ASI department of the government of Tamil Nadu are taking care of this wonderful temple. It may not be an architectural temple, but it has got a great historical reverence. And every Indian, every South Indian, every person has to feel proud about the great King Rajendra. Unfortunately, the place where he is been kept here, the mortal remains of him has been kept here, is in the state of neglect. Hope one day this also gains importance like any other important place. Rajendra Chola had three sons, namely Rajati Raja Chola, Rajendra Chola II or Adi Rajendra, and Veera Rajendra. All the three followed him to the throne of Chola in succession after Rajendra. But they were very short-lived, very, very short-lived. He had two daughters, Pannar Arulmozhi Nangai and Ammanga Devi. This Ammanga Devi was married to Rajanarendra, and their son was Kulotunga I, who later became the great Chola monarch. Rajendra was a great king who ruled for 30 years and was in continuation of the golden era of the Tamil country, which was started by Rajaraja. This great temple lost its grandeur and was left to ruins. Thanks to ASI, it has come back to life today. What we see today in Gangaikonda Cholapuram is only the 50% of the temple that was built by Rajendra Chola. The 50% of the temple that existed in the he days is what we are seeing today. Everything is in ruins. Thanks to ASI, they are maintaining it and brought back life to this temple. Today, now we'll take the virtual tour around this great temple of Gangaikonda Cholishwaram, built by Rajendra Chola in his capital city. The entrance. This is the entrance for the great temple of Gangaikonda Cholapuram, as you see here. The basement of the Vimana, a basement of the great Gopuram that once existed alone is seen here. In between that entrance, you see the imposing structure of the Vimana on top of the sanctum. The Vimana itself looks like a beautiful Shivalinga, which is there in the open area, open sky. It reflects the greatness of Shiva in the linga form there. A very imposing Vimana's darshan can be seen there as you enter this temple. The next thing, as you enter, the imposing thing that you see here is the beautiful Nandi image. This Nandi is not the original Nandi which was built along with the temple by Rajendra. We do not have any evidence of whether there was a Nandi existing and what was the size of the Nandi or anything. This Nandi was a later addition, but still, comparing to the size of that temple, this Nandi is huge. And as such, the first impression that you get on seeing the Vimana and the Nandi is stunning. You have two Dwarapalakas, which is image. I mean, this is two are something separate, brought out from somewhere and kept here. We do not know whether this was the original Dwarapalakas that were adorned on the gateway of this temple, the Gopura of this temple. Normally, if you think it was something like Tanjavur temple, there should have been two great, huge Dwarapalas, but unfortunately, we do not know what happened to them. We assume that these two Dwarapalakas were the ones which were there, and this is kept there as two separate idols on either side of the entrance today. The entrance tower and the superstructure of which is completely fallen. The entrance tower, the Gopuram, which I mean, the superstructure is totally fallen. This measures 68 feet by 46 feet with a 12 feet entrance gateway. A beautiful structure or a beautiful Gopuram should have existed here. Today, only the base is seen. This Gopuram entrance followed the same pattern as what we see in Tanjavur temple. There are no sculptures on the basement except these two Dwarapalas. As I said, it should have been brought out from somewhere and kept here. Maybe belonging to this temple, which was elsewhere also. We do not know about that. Unlike Tanjavur and Dharasuram and Tribhuvanam, the great temples of Cholas, this temple of Gangaikonda Cholapuram had only one entrance to the temple. In temples of Tanjavur, Dharasuram, and Tribhuvanam and other places, you have two entrances. In Tanjavur, you have the Kerlandakan Tiruvasal and the Rajarajan Tiruvasal. As you enter these two Tiruvasals only, you can go inside the courtyard of the temple. Here, you have only one major Gopuram. And that too, this Gopuram is only the basement of the Gopuram is seen today. So this temple had only one entrance or one Gopura entrance. As one steps inside, the great Vimana arrests the visitor's sight. The Vimana is recessed on corners, and the upward movement of the Vimana presents a striking contrast to the straight side edges or the pyramidal tower that we see in Tanjavur. If you see the Tanjavur Gopuram, it's a very squarish pyramidal type. But here, it is so beautiful. It's absolutely with several contours there. It is something amazing and striking. Although this rises to the height of 186 feet from the ground level, it is shorter than the Tanjavur Gopuram by 30 feet, whereas Tanjavur Gopuram is 216 feet, and this is only 186 feet. This is often described, this Vimana is often described as the feminine part or the counterpart of the Tanjavur. If you call the Tanjavur Vimanam as a masculine beauty, the Vimana of Gangaikonda Cholapuram could be said as the feminine beauty of the Dravidian style of Vimana constructions. So that is an imposing structure and an imposing Vimana that you see here as you enter into the courtyard of the temple. Thirdly, a large size bull is seen on top of the pedestal facing the main sanctum. This particular bull structure is made of stucco with stones that had fallen down from the temple and other places. And with brick and stone, everything, they have used it and made this beautiful, imposing Nandi, or what you call the bull, the Rishabha. It is not known whether there was an original monolithic bull or Nandi that was there in front of this temple. The Balipita is also seen to the east of this Nandi made, and this Nandi, what you see here is the contribution of the Udayarpalayam Jamindars who created this during the 19th century. This is the imposing big Nandi. You can see the size of the Nandi with the person standing there. It's a huge Nandi, or a bull, Rishabha, what you call it. Very similar to that of what we see in Tanjavur Big Temple. That is made of granite, but this is a stucco image which was made later in 19th century. Now what you see here is the aerial photograph of this great temple of Gangaikonda Cholapuram. This gives you the entire layout of the temple, how it is today. The Vimana is flanked on either side by two temples that is known as Tenkailayam and Vadakailayam. This is Tenkailayam and this is Vadakailayam. The two temples on either side of the Vimana that you see here is known as Tenkailasam and Vadakailasam. The one on the north side, the Vadakailasam, today houses the image of, houses the Murti of Devi, Brahannayaki inside it. And this particular temple is fairly well preserved than the Tenkailayam temple. Now what you see here in this circle is a small shrine for Nandikeshwara, Chandikeshwara, which is very close to the northern entrance. Chandikeshwara is one of the important deities which is seen in all the Shiva temples. So this is a beautiful temple dedicated to Chandikeshwara. The two circles that you see here now, the one on the northeast shrines the Durga Devi, and the one here denotes the Simmakkanare or the Simmakkeni, a step well leading through the body of a lion. So this is the layout of the temple, the general layout of the temple. You can see that all side compound, and the entrance is through the east. You have the main Gopuram there, and all the basement is seen here. The compound wall is low raised, and we'll see all those things in detail as we go through this. The courtyard of this temple is 566.9 feet length and 318.6 feet width, and has a transept at the west in line with the main sanctum. The outer prakara, we can see only the base of the outer prakara structure. The enclosure of the outer prakara, mantapas, and the different sannidhis that are normally located in these outer prakaras are totally missing. Only a wall, a portion of the wall is seen here, and that too, this was later built by the ASI with the available stones that were found there. This is the outer prakara. The basement of that alone is seen. You can see there must have been a sanctum or a shrine here dedicated for some god, goddesses, everything. At regular intervals of these bases, shrines are noticed. These shrines that you see on the basement of the prakara, it's just like Tanjavur temple. Possibly at one point of time, this should have housed the images of Ashtadikpalakas and all the other Parivara Devatas. If you take into consideration, Tanjavur temple had 36 such outer shrines there. 36 shrines located all over the Prakara of Tanjavur. Similarly, this should have had almost the same number of shrines which were located in this temple once upon a time. This is the outer Prakara that you see in a very, very dilapidated condition. From the existing northern portion of this outer Prakara, we presume that this particular entire Prakara of this temple should have been a two-storied structure running all around the temple. So it should have been a magnificent Prakara in 2 levels. Unfortunately, this entire Prakara was pulled down by the Britishers in 1836. Every single stone that had inscriptions and everything were removed from here and taken and dumped into the river to build the beautiful, build a dam across the Kolidam River. The Kolidam River dam was necessary for irrigational purposes, but then at what cost? Nobody opposed it. This was ruined totally by the Britishers. Look at that Prakara, you can see that. What a beautiful Prakara that had once existed there, running all around in 2 levels. How much of stones that should have used it? And they must have quarried from different places and brought it here. With so much of efforts, these people coolly carried away to build this dam, which is just 15 kilometers from this temple. It's a very, very pathetic sight to see that. If you understand the history of this and see this temple Prakara, your eyes will bleed. What sort of efforts this great king should have put? How much of efforts he has taken to sanctify this particular temple, called it as Gangaikonda Cholapuram, and built such a huge, magnificent structure. Useless people ruthlessly have totally destroyed this. Now, this is again an aerial picture of this great temple of Gangaikonda Cholapuram taken from the internet. I had to take this photo to show you this particular structure. The circular structure that you see on the southeast of this temple is not an original structure of this temple. This complete stone structure, which looks like a fort wall, was built by the Britishers to house their cannons in their war against the French. So this temple was used by the Britishers as a fortress. They destroyed this temple by not only dismantling the prakaras, but also used it in the war. And several portions of this temple are damaged because of that. It's a pathetic condition to see that. The Tenkailayam temple. The shrine to the south of the main temple in the outer Prakara is known as Tenkailasam or Tenkailayam. The temple has a sanctum preceded with the Mantapa in front that you see here, the sanctum and the preceded with the Mantapa. And you enter through those side steps here on the south and the north side. The south wall of this Mantapam carry many Devakoshtas, and you find the images of Ganesha, Dakshinamurti, Bhikshadana, Ardhanari, Gauri Prasada, Bhairava, and so on. Beautiful images are there. You got the Dwarapala there in the Tenkailayam. Again, you find the Ardhanarishwara form of Shiva there in the Tenkailam, one of the Koshtas of Tenkailam, and the beautiful Ganesha in the seated form in this. The sculptures that decorated the northern portion of this wall are totally missing. They should have been vandalized or taken away by somebody. We do not know. Nothing remains there on the northern side of this beautiful temple. The inner sanctum, which once housed a Shivalinga, is now empty and in ruins. Today, that has been used as a storehouse by the Archaeological Survey of India to keep all their what you call the equipments there, like for digging and all that. So they keep it there. So it is a storehouse. The one which was a sanctum once upon a time, sanctified, now is the storehouse by the Archaeological Survey of India. Here you see a mantaba, the basement of the mantaba in front of the Tenkailayam. This mantaba should have been the Alankara mantaba of the temple. Today only the basement alone is seen here, and these 4 pillars are erected later by the ASI. Right in front of there is a freestanding Nandi. There's a well also there, and close by the well there is a freestanding Nandi image. This Nandi image belongs to the Rajendra era and belongs to this temple. Somehow it has found a place here. We do not know where it was and how it has come here. But it's very interesting to see this Nandi. The Nandi's face is so emotional. There's so much of expressions in this Nandi. If you see from this angle, it smiles. You can see the Nandi smiling. The same Nandi, when you see it from the other side, so much of sadness is there in the face. Its face totally shut down. It's got an expression in this. So the same Nandi from different angles gives you different expressions. It's a very interesting Nandi. It's just casually I mentioned it, but it's got nothing to do with this temple. But it was a part of this temple somewhere, and I do not know how it found a place here, and it's still there. The Vadakailayam temple. The north of this main temple is a small temple which houses Brahannayaki, the goddess of Gangakanda Cholishwarar. And the temple is a very much in the same resemblance of the Tenkailam in all the aspects of the kostas, the mantabas, the sanctum, everything. There's a sanctum preceded with the mantapa in front, and the steps lead from the side. And you have a beautiful Mahamantapam or the Alankara Mantapam right in front, which is well preserved, unlike the southern Kailasam, the Tenkailayam temple, which is totally gone and the basement alone is seen. This is the view of the Tenkailayam. The kostas are very similar, and it carries the same similar sculptures as what we saw in the Tenkailayam temple. This is the sculpture of the Dwarapala you see there. And there's a wall very close by. People who come out of the temple take the prasadam and they don't go with the kumkum from the Devi. They do all the markings of swastik, the sulam, everything on the wall, and damage the whole structure. In spite of this temple being under protected monument, look at the way in which they are doing it. The illiterate people are destroying this temple there. The Dwarapala is seen on the either side of the entrance as we see here. And there's a beautiful image of Devi Lakshmi and Saraswati here, Gajalakshmi and Saraswati. Here you see the image of Saraswati, very similar to that what you're going to see in the main temple. The beauty here is that the Saraswati is seen holding the Chin Mudra very clearly. This is Sharada Devi. And this Devi of Lakshmi and Saraswati being in temple had a great religious importance in those days. The worship of Lakshmi and Saraswati is considered to be a great importance. 1 minute. Now, this is the image of the Brahannayaki, the beautiful goddess enshrined in the sanctum of this temple, which was a later installation and not the original installation during the time of Rajendra Chola. Originally, this temple should have had the shrine of Shiva. The Shrevi shrine, even though it was built during the time of Rajendra, this shrine should have had Shiva image, and this was a later addition. The Brahannayaki Devi is tall, standing on the pedestal, bestowing grace on her devotees. The little temple that's on the northeast of the central shrine, close to the north exists, is a temple dedicated to Chandikeshwara. And this is an all-stone structure. From the basement is rice, and the Vimana and the superstructure, everything is totally in granite. This is the another view of the Chandesha Sannidhi that you see here in the just outside the north entrance. And this is the beautiful image of Chandesha that has been installed inside this temple. Now, this is the north side. You have the circular well with steps that are provided from one end, and the entrance to the steps is adorned with a beautiful lion image, what you see here, and this is called as the Simmakeni. It is believed that Rajendra Chola poured a part of the Ganga water brought from this famous Gangetic expedition, defeating the Pala regions, to sanctify this well. And this well is considered as a Ganga Jal even today. And these are the steps that lead inside the well. You can go and bring the water from the well, and that water is used even today for the puja of the deity there. The inscription on the well states clearly this image of the lion, Simha, was made during 19th century, and it was constructed by the Jamindar of Udayarpalayam. When Rajendra created, only the well was there. This image of Simha was brought in by the Jamindars of Udayarpalayam. To the west of this lion well, you stand the Durga Devi shrine, which is known as Mahishasuramardini shrine, or whatever you call that. So this is the imposing image of Mahishasuramardini seen here. She's shown, her name is known as Mangala Chandi. The image is very beautiful, unlike what we see of Mahishasuramardini elsewhere in this region. This Devi is seen with 20 arms slaying the demon Mahishasura. Look at that. This is the image of this Mangala Chandi that you see here. 20 arms. She's slaying the Asura. This structure, this temple structure, probably must have built within 14th and 15th century and do not form the part of the original temple layout. The sanctum is preceded with the mandapa, and the goddess is installed inside. In all likelihood is from the Kalyani Chalukya region, brought in as a war trophy by Rajendra or his son Rajadiraja, and it's installed here in this beautiful temple of Gangaikonda Cholapuram. The Vahana, the Simha Vahana, is seen pouncing on the Asura and drinking his blood. Very beautiful Mangala Chandi. It is not only this. Rajendra brought many of these Durga Devi images from different parts of this country. He brought it from Kalyani Chalukyas, he brought it from the Orissa region, he brought it from Pala region, and so many other places. He installed these images, huge images, all over the place of Gangaikonda Cholapuram area. Within a few kilometers surrounding the Gangaikonda Cholapuram area, you have 8 or 9 such beautiful Durga Devi images installed. This is one such image of Durga Devi, must have been from the Kalyani Chalukyas, which has been installed there. And you have again a very, very different type of Durga Devi or Mahishasuramardini, what you see here. This again should have been from the region of Kalyani Chalukyas. Similarly, you have the images of Mahishasuramardini from Kalinga, Pala, and other places also been installed there. So far, we have seen about the city, its builder, the outer shrines of this great edifice in detail. Our next part, we shall see the inside of the temple, the Vimana and the exquisite sculptures in detail. Thank you. And this lecture will be continued next week. Thank you very much. And I open for your questions.
Thank you so